Last Christmas Eve, my stepmother slammed a sharp decorative bow across my face while my father just shrugged, calling it holiday stress. They expected me to retreat into the playroom and stay silent, just like every year before, but they forgot about the camera above the front door. Now, as the holiday lights turn on, the whole city is about to learn the ugly price of their perfect family image. My name is Harper Calloway. I am 32 years old, and in the sprawling, rain-slicked city of Portland, Oregon. That means something. I pay my own mortgage on a loft apartment overlooking the Willamette River, a place with exposed brick walls and high ceilings that catch the gray morning light just right. I am the content lead at Northline Spark, a digital agency where I manage a team of 12 people, oversee six-figure marketing budgets, and put out PR fires for tech startups before most people have finished their first cup of artisanal coffee. My life is curated, organized, and mine. I am competent, I am respected, I am an adult. But the moment I drive 45 minutes south on I-5 and cross the city limits into Salem, specifically into the manicured, HOA-patrolled subdivision where my father lives, I cease to be any of those things. To Douglas and his wife, Rebecca. I am not a professional woman with a 401k and a busy social calendar. I am simply the available resource. I am the unmarried, childless daughter whose time is theoretically infinite and therefore worthless. I am the default setting. I am the unpaid help. It is a strange thing to grieve a parent while the other one is still standing right in front of you. My mother died when I was 16. Leaving behind a silence in our house that was loud enough to rattle the windows. Douglas, my father, did not know how to live inside that silence. He filled it a few years later with Rebecca. Rebecca is a woman who treats life like a staging area for a catalog photo shoot. She is beautiful in a sharp, brittle sort of way, the kind of woman who irons her jeans and has never, in the history of her life, had a hair out of place. She moved us into a house that screams perfect holiday suburb, a 2-story colonial with wraparound porches and a lawn so green it looks synthetic. Then there is the rest of the family equation. I have a half-brother, Logan. We share the same father, though Logan is 7 years older than me and remembers a version of Douglas that I never really knew, a version who was perhaps less tired, less eager to please a demanding new wife. Logan is married to a nice enough woman named Sarah, and they gave the family the ultimate gift: grandchildren. Emma is 9 years old, and Caleb is 6. Let me be clear about one thing before the pitchforks come out. I love my niece and nephew. Emma is a whip-smart girl who asks questions about space and dinosaurs that sometimes stump me, and Caleb is a sweet tumbleweed of a boy who gives the kind of sticky, fierce hugs that make you feel like the most important person in the world. They are good kids. They are not brats. They are not monsters. They are just children. Loud. High energy. Needy children. They are innocent. The problem has never been the children. The problem has always been the assumption that because I do not have children of my own, I must be dying to borrow someone else's. The dynamic started subtly, like a slow leak in a tire, until suddenly I was driving on the rim. It began with, "Harper, can you just watch them while we run to the store?" And evolved into, "Harper, take the kids to the park so the adults can talk." By the time I hit 28, it was a cemented law of physics in the Calloway household. If there is a gathering, Harper is the babysitter. It happens every single time: Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, Easter, the 4th of July. I walk through the front door, usually holding a bottle of expensive Pinot Noir or a side dish I spent 3 hours preparing, and before I can even take off my coat, the handoff happens. I remember one specific Christmas party 3 years ago. It was the catalyst, the moment I realized that this wasn't just a habit, but a hierarchy. I had arrived at the house wearing a new silk dress, feeling particularly good about a promotion I had just landed at the agency. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted my father to say he was proud of me. I wanted to stand by the kitchen island with a glass of wine and laugh about politics or movies or the terrible traffic on the bridge. The moment I stepped into the foyer, the air smelling of pine needles and expensive cinnamon candles. Rebecca descended upon me. She was wearing a red velvet gown that looked like it cost more than my first car. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask about my drive. She didn't even say hello. "Oh, thank God. You are here," she said, breathless, pressing a piece of cardstock into my hand. I looked down. It was a typed list. Activities for the kids' room. "What is this?" I asked, confused. "The caterers are running behind, and the sommelier is already setting up the tasting in the living room," Rebecca said, smoothing her hair. "The kids are getting restless upstairs. I set up a craft station in the playroom. There are gingerbread kits. But you need to supervise the icing so it does not get on the carpet. And Caleb needs his inhaler if he starts coughing. Just keep them occupied until dessert, okay? You are a lifesaver." She patted my cheek, a patronizing, airy little tap, and turned her back on me before I could utter a single syllable of protest. I stood there, holding the list, watching the scene unfold in the living room. My father was there, laughing with Logan, who is also a parent, Logan, whose children were currently upstairs waiting for their aunt, Logan, who was holding a crystal tumbler of scotch and settling into a leather armchair by the fire. Sarah, his wife, was chatting with a neighbor. Not a single person looked my way. Not a single person wondered why the 30-year-old woman in the silk dress was heading up the stairs instead of toward the bar. I walked into the playroom to find chaos. Glue sticks everywhere. Emma trying to cut Caleb's hair with safety scissors. For 4 hours, I managed meltdowns, wiped noses, mediated fights over red gumdrops versus green gumdrops, and cleaned up spilled juice. I missed the wine tasting. I missed the hors d'oeuvres. I missed the conversation. When I finally came downstairs, sweaty and exhausted with icing on my new dress, the party was winding down. I found Rebecca in the kitchen, stacking plates. "I did not get to eat dinner," I said, my voice quiet but trembling. "Next year, I want to sit with the adults. Rebecca, I want to actually attend the party." She stopped what she was doing and looked at me with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. It was a pitying look, the kind you give a dog that doesn't understand why it can't sit on the couch. "Oh, Harper," she sighed, shaking her head. "Do not be dramatic. Look at your brother. Logan has to worry about mortgages and school tuitions and keeping a marriage together. You are single. You are just more flexible. It is easier for you to help the family out. It is your contribution." My contribution? From that day on, I started noticing it everywhere. The assumption that my time was public property. "Harper, we are going to catch the late movie. Can you watch the kids? You are not doing anything tonight, right? Harper, we need someone to take Emma to her recital because Logan has a meeting and I have yoga. You can just work from your laptop in the car, right?" I started canceling plans. I missed a road trip to the coast with my college roommates because Rebecca had a crisis involving a florist and needed someone to watch Caleb. I missed the second half of the Super Bowl 3 years in a row because I was in the backyard pushing swings while the men yelled at the television inside. I stopped dating for a while because every time I tried to plan a weekend away, some family obligation would conveniently arise, and if I said no, the guilt trips would begin. "It must be nice to just only think about yourself," Rebecca would say into the phone, her voice dripping with passive-aggressive disappointment. "Your father was really hoping to see you, but I guess your brunch is more important." Or my father, the great enabler, would chime in with his soft, pleading voice. "Help Rebecca out, honey. She is under a lot of stress trying to make everything perfect. Just this once." But it was never just this once. It was always. I became the path of least resistance. I was the safety valve for their pressure cooker. Because I did not have a husband to defend my time or children of my own to prioritize. They viewed me as a vacuum, an empty space waiting to be filled with their needs. They stripped away my adulthood, my career, and my autonomy, reducing me to a pair of extra hands and a lap for a toddler. I tried to fight it in small ways. I tried showing up late. I tried claiming I was sick, but the narrative was already written. In the story of the Calloway family, Harper is the spinster aunt, the the reliable eccentric who lives alone and has nothing better to do than serve the greater good of the nuclear family unit. Anger is a funny thing. It doesn't always explode. Sometimes, it just calcifies. It hardens, layer by layer, over the years, until you are carrying around a heavy stone weight in your chest. I love my father. Despite his passivity, I tolerate Rebecca. Despite her narcissism, I adore my brother, despite his obliviousness. But the resentment had been building, fermenting into something bitter and potent. This year, however, the air felt different. I was tired. I was bone-deep tired of being the background character in my own life. I had worked 80-hour weeks to launch a massive campaign for a shoe company in November. I was burned out. I needed a break. I needed a holiday. As the calendar crept toward December, and the inevitable group texts about family schedules began to ping on my phone, I made a promise to the woman in the mirror, the successful, 32-year-old executive who commanded a room of creatives but couldn't say no to her stepmother. I vowed that this Christmas would be different. I would not be ushered into the playroom. I would not be handed a schedule. I would not be the help. If they wanted a nanny, they could hire one. If they wanted a daughter, they would have to treat me like one. I didn't know then how badly that vow would be tested. I didn't know that my refusal to play my part would shatter the porcelain veneer of the Calloway family Christmas. I just knew that I was done being the sacrifice on the altar of Rebecca's Instagram-perfect life. If they thought they could use me one more time, they were in for a rude awakening. I was not 16 anymore, and I was done being silent. 2 weeks before Christmas, the summons arrived. It was not a request. It was a command disguised as a casual invitation for coffee. Rebecca texted me on a Tuesday morning, claiming she had found a specific blend of artisanal roasted beans she knew I would love, and suggested I drive down to Salem that evening. The pretext was thin, transparent as cellophane, but the underlying weight of obligation was heavy enough to drag me onto the interstate after a 10-hour shift at the agency. I arrived at the house around 7 in the evening. The suburb was already in full holiday rigor. Every lawn in the cul-de-sac was a battlefield of competitive cheer. Inflatable snowmen waved mechanically in the wind, and LED lights dripped from the gutters like electric icicles. My father's house was the crown jewel of the block. It was tasteful, of course. Rebecca did not do tacky. Everything was white and gold this year. White lights, gold ribbons, wreaths that looked like they had been woven by elves with degrees in interior design. It was beautiful, and it made my stomach turn. When I walked inside, the heat hit me first, dry and smelling intensely of spiced apple and pine. It was the smell of a magazine spread, not a home. Rebecca was in the living room, standing by the 12-foot Douglas fir that dominated the space. She was adjusting ornaments, her fingers moving with surgical precision. My father, Douglas, was sitting in his usual spot on the beige sectional, an iPad balanced on his knees, and a glass of amber liquid on the coaster beside him. "Harper!" Rebecca exclaimed, turning as if she hadn't just heard the front door open. She clasped her hands together. "Oh, you look tired. Are you drinking enough water? City air can be so drying." "I am fine, Rebecca," I said, bypassing the hug she offered and moving straight to the kitchen island. "Just busy. End-of-year reports." "Well, that is exactly why we wanted to talk to you," she said, following me. She didn't offer the coffee she had used as bait. Instead, she leaned her elbows on the marble counter, fixing me with a look that was equal parts affection and calculation. "We have been thinking about you, and the kids. You know, Emma and Caleb just adore you. I was telling Douglas yesterday, no one handles them like Harper. You have this authority. They actually listen to you." I stiffened. Flattery from Rebecca was never free. It was the down payment on a transaction I was about to lose. "They are good kids," I said cautiously. "I love them." "Exactly," she beamed. "And because you are so good with them, and because you are family, we wanted to give you a special opportunity this year." I watched her face, waiting for the trapdoor to open. "Douglas and I," she continued, gesturing vaguely toward my father, who was pretending to read an email. We are exhausted. It has been a brutal year. We managed to secure a chalet at that exclusive ski resort in Aspen, just for the two of us. A second honeymoon. Really. We leave on the 23rd and come back on the 30th. I did the math in my head. That is Christmas week. It is, she agreed, her smile not wavering. And obviously we cannot take the little ones. They are too young for the slopes. And honestly, we need an adult-only recharge. So, we decided the best place for them is right here, in their own home, surrounded by their Christmas traditions, with you. She said it with such finality, as if she were bestowing a knighthood upon me. I blinked. Excuse me? You will stay here, she clarified, speaking slower, as if I were hard of hearing. For the week, you can move into the guest suite. It will be fun. You can bake cookies, watch movies, do all those auntie things. Logan and Sarah are going to Hawaii for her sister's wedding. Bad timing, I know, but what can you do? So we told them you would cover the kids. They had already told my brother. They had already booked the tickets. They had not asked me. No, I said. The word hung in the air, sharp and foreign in that house. Rebecca's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before she chuckled. No, she repeated. Oh, Harper, do not be silly. I know you do not have plans. You never have plans. Actually, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rapid thumping of my heart. I do. I booked a cabin in North Oregon with 3 friends. We are leaving on the 23rd. It is a road trip. Everything is paid for. This was the truth. It was the first time in 10 years I had prioritized myself. I had bought snow chains for my tires. I had bought a new parka. I was going to drink hot chocolate with whiskey and play board games with people who actually liked me. Rebecca's expression hardened. The warmth evaporated from the room, leaving only the cold glitter of the decorations. She straightened up, crossing her arms over her cashmere sweater. You are going to cancel it, she stated. I am not, I replied. I cannot get a refund, and I am not leaving my friends in the lurch. You are not leaving your friends? Rebecca's voice pitched up, sharp as a glass shard. Harper, we are talking about your family, your niece and nephew. Your father needs this break. I need this break. You are telling me you would choose a drunken weekend with some random girls over the well-being of your own flesh and blood? I looked at my father. Dad, I asked, are you listening to this? Douglas looked up from his iPad, his face pained. He took a sip of his drink, swirling the ice cubes. Harper, honey, he said, his voice mild. It is just a week. Rebecca has been looking forward to this trip for months. Can't you reschedule with your friends? Family comes first. I am 32 years old, I said, gripping the edge of the counter. I have a job. I have a life. You cannot just volunteer me for a week of 24-hour childcare without asking me. That is not how this works. It is how it works when you are part of this family, Rebecca snapped. She moved around the island, encroaching on my space. After everything Douglas has done for you, he paid for your college. He supported you when you were stumbling around in your 20s trying to find yourself. You have a roof over your head because of the foundation he gave you. You owe us. You owe this family. The debt card. They always played the debt card, as if raising a child was a loan that accrued interest, payable in servitude for the rest of my life. I do not owe you unpaid labor, I said, my voice rising. I am not your nanny. If you can afford Aspen, you can afford a professional sitter, or you cannot go on vacation during Christmas if you have nowhere to put your grandchildren. Rebecca's face flushed a deep, ugly red. She was not used to resistance. She was used to the Harper who folded, the Harper who apologized for taking up space. She reached out and grabbed a decorative object from a bowl on the dining table. It was a massive, glitter-encrusted bow, made of stiff, hardened fabric and wire, meant to be attached to a wreath. It was heavy, the size of a dinner plate. You selfish, ungrateful little brat! She screamed. She raised her arm and slammed the bow down onto the polished mahogany table between us. Crack! The sound was explosive, like a gunshot in the quiet house. A piece of the hard plastic backing shattered, skittering across the wood. The violence of the gesture was shocking. It was a tantrum, but a dangerous one. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. "Rebecca," Douglas said, finally standing up, but he didn't move toward her. He didn't tell her to stop. He just looked uncomfortable, like someone had spilled red wine on the carpet. "Look what you made me do," Rebecca hissed, breathing hard, staring at the broken decoration. She looked up at me, her eyes manic. "You spoil everything. You always have. You walk in here with your sour attitude and your selfishness, and you ruin the mood. Get out." "Gladly," I said. My hands were shaking, but I shoved them into my coat pockets so she wouldn't see. I turned and walked to the door. I didn't look at my father. I couldn't bear to see the cowardice etched into his features. I got into my car and locked the doors, my fingers fumbling with the ignition. As I backed out of the driveway, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rebecca. "If you want to be treated like an adult, act like one. Adults make sacrifices. Adults put family above their own petty desires. Do not expect a warm welcome on Christmas Day if you do not fix this." I drove north on the interstate, driving too fast, the blur of red taillights in front of me smearing into long, bloody streaks. I pulled into a rest stop 10 miles outside of Portland because I was crying too hard to see the road. I called Maya. She picked up on the second ring, her face appearing on my screen, framed by a green clay face mask. "Hey, Harp, did you get the— Whoa, what is wrong? Where are you?" I told her everything. I told her about the demand, the guilt trip, the way Douglas sat there like a piece of upholstery, and the bow slamming into the table. "Heck no," Maya said, her voice tinny through the phone speakers. "Harper, you are not going. Tell them to go to hell. Seriously, cut them off. Block the number. That is insane behavior." "I know." I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. "I know it is. But the kids, Emma and Caleb, if I do not go, and Logan is in Hawaii, what happens to them? Rebecca is capable of hiring some stranger from an agency who does not know Caleb has asthma, or worse, she will resent them the whole time and take it out on them." "That is not your responsibility," Maya said firmly. "They are the grandparents. Logan is the parent. You are the aunt. You are not the fail-safe for their bad planning." "It feels like I am," I whispered. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. My apartment was dark and quiet, a sanctuary compared to the weaponized, festive atmosphere of my father's house. I sat on my couch, staring at the river lights, feeling a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. Then, around midnight, another message came through. This one was from Douglas. "Harper, honey, I am sorry about tonight. Rebecca is just under so much pressure. You know how she gets about the holidays. She wants everything perfect and she just snapped. It is just holiday stress. She did not mean to yell." I stared at the words, just holiday stress, the universal pardon for bad behavior in the Calloway household. A second message bubbled up. "Please do not let this ruin Christmas. We want you there. Forget the babysitting request. We will figure something else out for the week. Just come for Christmas morning. We will have breakfast, open presents, and you can leave by noon. No strings attached. I promise. Please, kiddo, for me." I read it 3 times. No babysitting. Figure something else out. Just breakfast. It was the lifeline I wanted. I wanted to believe that my father could still protect me, even a little. I wanted to believe that the bow slamming into the table was a one-time aberration, a crack in the facade that could be plastered over. I wanted to see Emma and Caleb open the Lego sets I had bought them. Against every instinct screaming in my gut, against Maya's advice echoing in my head, I typed back, "Okay, breakfast only. I am leaving at noon." "Deal," he replied instantly. "See you on the 24th. I put the phone down, feeling a heavy sinking sensation. I told myself I was doing it for the kids. I told myself I was being the bigger person. But as I lay in bed, listening to the rain hit the glass, I couldn't shake the sound of that hard plastic bow hitting the table. Crack. It sounded like a warning shot, and I had just agreed to walk back onto the firing range. The morning of December 24th arrived with a gray, suffocating dampness that is characteristic of the Pacific Northwest in winter. I loaded my car in the parking garage of my apartment building, my breath misting in the cold air as I arranged the wrapped boxes in the trunk. I had bought Emma a telescope and Caleb a massive set of magnetic building tiles. I had even bought a bottle of 20-year-old scotch for my father and a silk scarf for Rebecca, because habit is a muscle that is incredibly difficult to atrophy, even when you are actively trying to sever the limb. I drove south on Interstate 5, the windshield wipers slapping a rhythmic, hypnotic beat against the drizzle. "Just breakfast," I repeated to myself, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Just breakfast. Eat the pancakes. Watch the kids open the paper. Smile. Leave by noon. Do not engage." My father's promise via text message felt like a flimsy shield, but it was the only one I had. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the boundaries I had finally set 2 weeks ago had actually registered, that my absence of communication since the bow incident had sent a clear enough message. When I pulled into the driveway in Salem, the house looked like a movie set. The landscaping was immaculate. The oversized wreath on the front door was perfectly centered, and the windows glowed with a warm, inviting amber light. It was the kind of house that made strangers slow down as they drove by, whispering about how lovely it must be to live inside such warmth. I took a deep breath, grabbed the gifts, and walked to the door. I did not have to knock. The door swung open before I reached the mat, revealing the housekeeper, Maria, looking harried. "Happy holidays, Miss Harper," she whispered, taking the bags from my hands. Her eyes darted back toward the kitchen. She is in a mood. I stepped inside. The air in the house was thick, heavy with the scent of cinnamon sticks and baking gingerbread. It was so potent it felt less like a smell and more like a physical assault on the sinuses. Christmas music was playing from the hidden surround sound speakers, some orchestral version of Joy to the World that sounded more ominous than joyful. Rebecca was standing in the foyer, adjusting a garland on the banister. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater dress and heels. Her makeup flawless at 9 in the morning. She didn't look at me. She was looking at her phone, which was propped up on a ring light stand. "Hold on," she muttered to herself, tilting her head. Then, she glanced at me. There was no warmth in her eyes, just a flat, appraisal-like stare. "You are 5 minutes late. The lighting in the breakfast nook is best before 9:30. "Hello to you too, Rebecca," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Where is Dad?" "In the kitchen. Don't track mud on the rug." She turned back to her phone, tapping the screen. I walked into the kitchen. My father was sitting at the head of the long oak table, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes were dark, and his shoulders were hunched. When he saw me, a flicker of relief crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by a nervous twitch. "Harper," he said, standing up to give me a half-hearted hug. "You made it." "I said I would," I replied, pulling back. "Just for breakfast, remember?" He didn't answer. He just looked down at his coffee cup. Emma and Caleb were already at the table, vibrating with that specific frequency of childhood anticipation. When they saw me, they shrieked. "Aunt Harper!" Caleb scrambled off his chair and launched himself at my legs. Emma followed, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Did you bring presents?" Caleb asked, his eyes wide. "Caleb, rude," Emma scolded him, though she was grinning. "But seriously, did you?" "I did," I laughed, feeling the first genuine emotion I had felt all morning. "But you have to eat first." For 20 minutes, things almost felt normal. We ate pancakes shaped like reindeer. I wiped syrup off Caleb's chin. I listened to Emma talk about her school play. Rebecca floated in and out of the room, snapping photos of the table, of the food, of the kids, but never of me. I was a ghost in her production, invisible unless I was needed. Then, as the plates were being cleared by Maria, the atmosphere shifted. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Rebecca stood up. She didn't clear her throat, but her posture commanded silence. She walked to the counter and picked up a laminated sheet of paper. She placed it in the center of the table, right next to the syrup pitcher. "So," she began, her voice bright and brittle, "since we are all here, I wanted to go over the itinerary for the week to make sure we are all on the same page." I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. "Rebecca," I said, my voice low, "we talked about this." She ignored me. She tapped a manicured fingernail on the paper. "This is the schedule for Emma and Caleb. Nap times are strictly at 1 o'clock. Caleb needs his nebulizer at 8 in the morning and 8 at night. The fridge is stocked. The housekeeper will come on Tuesday and Thursday to clean, but you are responsible for all meals." She looked up, smiling that terrible, vacant smile. "And wonderful news. We managed to get an earlier flight. Our plane leaves Portland at 6 o'clock tonight, which means we need to leave here by 3, so you can get settled in the guest room right after we open presents." I looked at my father. He was staring at the tablecloth, tracing the pattern with his thumb. He knew. He had known all along. The text message, "Just breakfast," had been a lie, a bait and switch. "Dad?" I said. He flinched but didn't look up. "Douglas and I are so excited," Rebecca continued, bulldozing over the silence. "We really need this. Harper and the kids are so excited to have a whole week with their favorite aunt." "No," I said. The word fell onto the table like a stone. Rebecca stopped smiling. "Excuse me?" "I said no," I repeated, my voice shaking slightly, not with fear, but with a rising, hot tide of rage. "I told you 2 weeks ago, I am not staying. I have a trip booked. I am leaving at noon." "Do not be ridiculous," Rebecca snapped. "We have already paid for the tickets. They are non-refundable. It is $5,000. Harper." "That sounds like a you problem," I said. "You booked them after I explicitly told you I was not available." "Available?" Rebecca laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You are single. You work at a computer. You are always available. Do not pretend your little road trip with your drinking buddies is more important than your father's health. He is stressed. He is on the verge of burnout. Do you want him to have a heart attack?" "Do not put that on me," I said. Standing up, my legs felt weak. "I am not responsible for his health, and I am not responsible for your poor planning." "Poor planning?" Rebecca's voice rose an octave. "We are giving you a chance to be useful, to actually contribute to this family instead of just showing up to drink our wine and take our presents. After everything we have done for you? After we took you in? You ungrateful, selfish little—" "I am not a child," I shouted back, cutting her off, "and I am not your servant. I am leaving, now." I turned to grab my purse from the back of the chair. "You are not going anywhere," Rebecca shrieked. She lunged toward the Christmas tree, which was piled high with beautifully wrapped boxes. There was a large, square box sitting on the top of the pile, adorned with a massive, glitter-encrusted bow. It was one of those expensive, structured bows made of stiff mesh and wire, heavy and hard. She ripped the bow off the box. "You listen to me," she screamed, closing the distance between us. "You owe us. You owe us." And then she swung. It wasn't a slap. It was a strike. She gripped the back of the bow like a weapon and whipped it across my face with all the force of her frustration. Whack! The sound was sickeningly loud, a wet, crunching impact of stiff plastic and wire against flesh. The pain was immediate and blinding. The glitter-coated mesh acted like sandpaper, scraping across my cheekbone, while the wire frame dug into the soft skin near my eye. My head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. The room went instantly, terrifyingly silent. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my face. When I pulled it away, my fingers came back smeared with red foundation and a few specks of blood where the wire had scratched the skin. My cheek throbbed with a hot, pulsing agony. Emma gasped. It was a small, terrified sound. I looked over. She had her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Caleb had slid under the table. I looked at Rebecca. She was breathing hard. The mangled bow still clutched in her hand. For a second, she looked shocked by her own violence. Then, her face hardened into a mask of defensive indignation. But I didn't care about Rebecca. I cared about the man sitting at the head of the table. I turned to my father. My father, who had held me when I cried over my mother's coffin. My father, who had taught me how to ride a bike. My father, who was the only parent I had left. Surely, this was it. Surely, seeing his wife physically assault his adult daughter in front of his grandchildren would be the line. Surely, he would stand up, roar, throw her out, or at least rush to my side. Douglas slowly pushed his chair back. He stood up. He looked at me, touching my bleeding cheek. Then he looked at Rebecca, who was adjusting her sweater. He let out a long sigh, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Rebecca, honey, put the bow down," he said, his voice mild, almost bored. Then he turned to me. "Harper, calm down," he said. "You are upsetting the children." I stared at him. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Calm down? She just hit me. She hit me in the face. "It was an accident," Douglas said, waving his hand dismissively. "She was just gesturing. She is emotional. We are all emotional." "She hit me," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "It is just holiday stress," my father said. The words came out smooth and practiced, a mantra he had used 1,000 times to excuse the inexcusable. "You know how she gets. She wants everything to be perfect. Don't make a scene. Harper, don't ruin Christmas over a scratch. Just apologize to her for raising your voice, and let's move on." Apologize. He wanted me to apologize. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break. It evaporated. The tether that had bound me to this house, to this man, to the desperate hope that I still had a father, it just vanished. I looked at him and saw a stranger, a weak, pathetic stranger who would sacrifice his own daughter to keep the peace with a woman who treated people like props. The pain in my cheek was sharp, but the coldness spreading through my chest was absolute. I lowered my hand. I straightened my spine. I looked at the blood on my fingertips, then wiped it on my jeans. "No," I said. My voice was different now. It was devoid of pleading. It was the voice of the woman who managed million-dollar budgets and fired incompetent employees. "No more." I walked over to the kids. I crouched down, ignoring the way Rebecca bristled. "Emma, Caleb," I said, keeping my voice soft. "I have to go. But I want you to know that this is not your fault. I love you both very much." I stood up and looked at the two adults in the room. "I am leaving," I stated clearly. "I am getting in my car, and I am driving away, and here is what is going to happen next." I looked directly at Douglas. "If you leave for that airport," I said, enunciating every syllable, "if you get on that plane and leave these two children alone in this house for a week, thinking I will come back to save you, I will call the Child Protective Services, and then I will call the police." "You would not dare," Rebecca hissed, her face purple with rage. "You would not do that to your family." "Try me," I said. "You have exactly until I drive out of this subdivision to realize that I am done being your doormat. I am not your nanny. I am not your punching bag. And as of this moment, I am barely your daughter." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "Harper," Douglas called out, his voice finally showing a crack of panic. "Harper, wait. You can't just leave." "Watch me," I said. I turned my back on them. I walked out of the kitchen, through the foyer that smelled of cinnamon and lies, and out the front door. Behind me, I heard Rebecca scream, a high, piercing sound that shattered the suburban quiet. "You are ruining everything, you selfish brat! You are ruining Christmas!" I slammed the front door so hard the wreath shook. The sound echoed in my ears as I marched to my car, the cold rain hitting my burning cheek. I didn't look back. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. I was shaking. I was bleeding. But for the first time in my life, I was driving away. The vibration of my phone on the passenger seat of my car felt like a physical intrusion. It was 7:30 in the evening on Christmas Eve. I was parked in the lot of a 24-hour diner halfway between Salem and Portland, staring at a cup of lukewarm coffee and trying to stop my hands from shaking. The red welt on my cheek was throbbing, a hot, pulsing reminder of the plastic bow that had connected with my face only hours earlier. I looked at the screen. Dad. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I took a sip of coffee. It rang again immediately. I knew the pattern. If I did not answer, he would call Logan. Then he would call my workplace. Then he would call the police to do a welfare check, painting himself as the worried father and me as the unstable daughter. Douglas Calloway did not like loose ends, and right now, I was a very loose end. I slid my thumb across the screen. "What?" I said. No greeting, no warmth. "Harper." His voice came through the speaker, soft and laced with that particular brand of weary patience that always made me feel like the unreasonable one. "Honey, where are you? We are worried sick." "I am going home," I said, "and I am filing a police report about the assault." No, he said quickly, the panic rising in his tone. "Harper, please, do not do that. Think about what that would do to the family, to your brother, to the kids." Rebecca hit me in the face with a hard object. "Dad, in front of Emma and Caleb." "She is mortified." He lied. I could hear the fabrication in the way his voice pitched up. "She has been crying since you left. It was a reflex. Harper, she was just animated. She did not mean to make contact. It is the stress, the holiday pressure. You know how much she wants this trip to Aspen." "I do not care about her trip." "Listen to me," he said, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have talked. We are not going to force you to stay the week. We get it. You have plans. We respect that." I gripped the phone tighter. "So you are canceling the trip?" "Well, not exactly," he stammered. "We are looking into alternative childcare. We are calling agencies, but it is Christmas Eve. Harper, it is impossible to get someone on such short notice. Look, just come back tomorrow morning, just for 2 hours. Come at 8 o'clock. Watch the kids open their Santa gifts. Have a cup of coffee. Let Rebecca apologize to you properly. Then you can leave. We will figure out the rest. Just don't let Emma and Caleb wake up on Christmas morning wondering why Aunt Harper abandoned them." It was a low blow, a strategic, targeted strike at the only soft spot I had left. He knew I could walk away from him. He knew I could walk away from Rebecca. But he knew I would walk through fire before I let those 2 children think I didn't love them. "If I come back," I said slowly, "I am leaving at 10 o'clock sharp. And if Rebecca says one word about me staying, I am walking out." "Deal," he said instantly. 10 o'clock. Thank you. Honey, you are doing the right thing. Drive safe." He hung up before I could change my mind. I stared at the phone, feeling a heavy, sickening knot in my stomach. It felt wrong. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing, telling me that Douglas Calloway never capitulated that easily, but the alternative, sitting alone in my apartment on Christmas morning, imagining my niece and nephew asking where I was worse. I drove back to Portland, iced my cheek, and slept for 3 hours. The morning of the 25th broke with a deceptively peaceful stillness. I dressed in jeans and a thick wool sweater, covering the bruise on my cheek with a heavy layer of concealer. I grabbed the bag of gifts I had taken with me the day before and got back into my car. I pulled into the driveway in Salem at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually, on Christmas morning, the house would be vibrating with noise, but it was quiet. The second thing I noticed, and the thing that made the blood drain from my face, was the driveway. It was empty. My father's massive black SUV was gone. Rebecca's silver sedan was gone. The garage doors were closed tight. I sat in my car for a moment, the engine idling, staring at the empty expanse of concrete where their vehicles should have been. Maybe they went to the store, a naive voice in my head suggested. On Christmas morning? My logical brain countered, no. I killed the engine and got out. The air was freezing. I walked to the front door, my boots crunching loudly on the frosted path. I tried the handle, locked. I rang the doorbell. I heard the chime echo inside. Then, I heard running footsteps. Small, frantic footsteps. The deadbolt clicked, and the door swung open. Emma stood there in her flannel pajamas, her hair a bird's nest of tangles. Behind her, Caleb was sitting on the bottom step of the stairs, clutching a stuffed bear, looking small and scared. "Aunt Harper!" Emma screamed, throwing her arms around my legs. "You came! Mommy said you were coming!" I looked over her head, scanning the hallway. It was empty. The house was cold. The heat had been turned down. "Emma," I said, my voice tight, "where are Mommy and Grandpa?" "They left," she chirped, pulling me inside. "They had to go to the snow place early. Mommy said the airplane would not wait, but she said it was okay because you were on your way to take care of us for the whole week." The world seemed to tilt sideways. I stepped inside and closed the door, locking it instinctively. "When did they leave, Emma?" She scrunched up her nose. "When it was still dark, they woke us up and gave us Pop-Tarts and said to watch TV until you got here. They said you promised." I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost doubled over. They had left 2 children, aged 9 and 6, alone in a house for hours, banking on the fact that I would show up. They had bet their children's safety on my guilt complex. "Okay," I said, forcing a smile onto my face. It felt like a mask of glass. "Okay, why don't you guys go into the living room and see if Santa came? I need to check something in the kitchen." "Yay!" Caleb yelled. Jumping up, the 2 of them ran into the living room, oblivious to the fact that they had been abandoned. I walked into the kitchen. The silence here was oppressive. On the center of the pristine marble island, sitting next to a bowl of untouched fruit, was a piece of creamy stationery. I walked over to it. I recognized Rebecca's looping, calligraphy-style handwriting immediately. Harper. Our flight was moved up to 6 in the morning due to the storm warning in Colorado. We tried to call, but your phone was off. We knew you would not want the kids to be alone. So we went ahead. We know you will do the right thing. You are family, after all. The itinerary is on the fridge. See you on the 30th. Love, Dad and Rebecca. Peace. Don't be dramatic. We knew you were coming at 8. I stared at the note. My hands were not shaking anymore. They had gone past shaking into a state of cold. Absolute stillness. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a trap. This was a calculated maneuver to force my compliance by using the physical safety of 2 children as leverage. They assumed that once I was here, I would be trapped. I couldn't leave the kids alone. So I would have to stay. I would have to be the nanny. I would have to cancel my trip. They had won. Or so they thought. I pulled out my phone. It was 8:15 in the morning. I took a photo of the note. I made sure the lighting was clear. I took a photo of the empty kitchen. I walked to the window and took a photo of the empty driveway. I walked into the living room and took a video of the kids opening presents alone, with the timestamp clearly visible on the screen. Then, I dialed my father's number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course, they were likely in the air, or close to it. I waited for the beep. "Douglas," I said. My voice was unrecognizable to my own ears. It was not the voice of a daughter. It was the voice of a prosecutor. "I am at the house. I found the note. I found the children alone." I took a breath. "It is currently 8:17 in the morning. You have exactly 1 hour to return to this house. If you are not in this driveway by 9:17, I am calling the police. I will report you for child abandonment and child endangerment. I will hand over the security footage of Rebecca hitting me, and I will hand over this note proving you left a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old unsupervised for hours." I paused. "I am not staying the week. I am not canceling my trip. You have 60 minutes. Clock starts now." I hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, listening to the sound of paper tearing in the living room. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was the nuclear option. If I made that call, if I called the police, there was no going back. CPS would open a file. My brother would be investigated. My father's reputation in the community would be destroyed. But if I stayed, I was telling them that this was acceptable, that they could hit me, lie to me, and use me, and I would take it. I walked into the living room. "Look, Aunt Harper," Caleb held up a Lego set. It is the Death Star. That is amazing, buddy, I said, sitting on the arm of the sofa. Hey, do you guys want to watch a movie? How about the Polar Express? Yes, Emma cheered. I put the movie on. I made them hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. I sat with them, smiling, commenting on the train, laughing at the funny parts. But my eyes never left the digital clock on the oven. 8:30. I sent a text to Logan in Hawaii. Emergency. Call me as soon as you land. Mom and Dad left the kids alone. 8:45. The kids were engrossed in the movie. I paced the length of the kitchen island. What if they were already on the plane? What if they couldn't come back? Then I would have to call. I would have no choice. I couldn't leave the kids alone, and I couldn't take them with me on a road trip without parental consent. That would be kidnapping. 8:55. My resolve started to waver. Was I really going to call the cops on my own father on Christmas Day? Was I really going to have patrol cars pull up with lights flashing? I looked at the red mark on my cheek in the hallway mirror. I looked at the note again. Don't be dramatic. Yes, I was. 9 o'clock. 15 minutes left. I put on my coat. I started packing my bag. I wanted to be ready. Where are you going? Emma asked, looking up from the screen. Just checking something outside. Sweetie, I lied. 9:10. The silence of the street was mocking me. Nothing, no cars, no sound. 9:12. I unlocked my phone. I pulled up the contact for the Salem Police Department non-emergency line, which I had saved the night before, just in case. My thumb hovered over the call button. 9:15. 2 minutes. I walked to the front window. I watched the street. Please, I whispered to the empty road. Don't make me do this. Just come back. 9:16. I took a deep breath. I tapped the green phone icon. The keypad came up. Then, I saw it. A black SUV tore around the corner of the cul-de-sac. It was moving way too fast for a residential zone. It swerved into the driveway, skidding slightly on the frost, and screeched to a halt behind my car. I lowered the phone. I exhaled. A long, shuddering breath that felt like it expelled all the air in my lungs. The driver's door flew open. Douglas jumped out. He wasn't wearing a coat, just a suit jacket, and he looked disheveled. Rebecca scrambled out of the passenger side. She was wearing a fur coat and large sunglasses, and even from inside the house, I could feel the radiation of her fury. They stormed up the walkway. I opened the front door before they could ring the bell. I stood in the doorway, blocking their entry, my arms crossed. You are back, I said. 9:17 exactly. Impressive driving. You are insane, Rebecca shrieked, pushing past me. She smelled of stale airport coffee and expensive perfume. You are actually psychotic. We were in the security line. We had to run out of the terminal. We lost our bags. We lost $5,000. You left your children alone, I said, my voice steady. You left them alone in a house with a locked door and no supervision. We knew you were coming, Douglas yelled. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. I had never seen him this angry. We knew you would be here. You threatened the police? On Christmas? Are you trying to destroy me? I am trying to teach you that no is a complete sentence, I said. I looked at the two of them. They were panting, furious, hateful. But they were here. The kids were safe. The kids are watching a movie, I said calmly. They think you came back because you missed them too much. Do not ruin that for them. Go inside. Wipe those looks off your faces. And be parents. Get out, Rebecca hissed, pointing a trembling finger at the driveway. Get out of my house, and do not ever come back. You are dead to us. Do you hear me? Dead. I hear you, I said. I stepped out onto the porch. Oh, I added, turning back one last time. And Dad? That note you left? I kept it. And the photos. Just in case you decide to tell anyone a different version of what happened today. Douglas stared at me. For a second, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. Merry Christmas, I said. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. My hands were steady on the wheel. I was shaking inside, my whole body vibrating with the aftershocks of adrenaline, but I didn't look back, not once. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the confrontation in the driveway was beginning to curdle into something colder and sharper. My father, Douglas, stood on the frost-covered porch, his chest heaving inside his wrinkled suit jacket. He looked less like a patriarch and more like a cornered animal, his eyes darting between me and the neighbors' houses, terrified that the screaming might attract an audience. "You are being hysterical," Douglas spat, his voice low and venomous. He took a step toward me, trying to use his height to intimidate, a tactic that might have worked when I was 12, but fell flat now that I was a 32-year-old woman holding the keys to my own escape. "You think we actually abandoned them? The Millers next door have a spare key. Harper, a spare key. If anything had happened, if there was an emergency, someone could have been here in 2 minutes. You are acting like we left them in a wolf den." I stared at him, marveling at the mental gymnastics required to reach that conclusion. "A spare key," I repeated, my voice flat. "So your plan B for your 6-year-old asthmatic grandson was a neighbor named Linda who is currently in Florida for the winter? I saw her Facebook posts. Dad, the Millers are not even in the state." Douglas flinched, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "Even if they were home," I continued, pointing a shaking finger at the closed front door behind him, "a key does not feed them breakfast. A key does not make sure Caleb takes his nebulizer treatment. A key does not stop Emma from trying to use the stove. You did not leave them with a babysitter. You left them with a prayer and a lock." "We left them with you," Rebecca shrieked. She had recovered from her initial shock and was now fully retrenched in her role as the victim. She stomped up the steps, her fur coat looking ridiculous against the casual suburban backdrop. "We knew you would come. We knew you were coming at 8 o'clock. You are the one who turned this into a police matter. You are the one who tried to criminalize your own family." "I did not try," I said. "I gave you a choice. You are the ones who gambled with your flight time." "You set a trap," Rebecca accused, her face contorted. "You wanted us to leave so you could hold it over our heads. You are sick. Harper, you are twisted. You have always been jealous of the life Douglas and I built, and now you are trying to sabotage it because you are miserable and alone. I am not the one who hit my stepdaughter in the face with a plastic bow because I did not get free labor," I shot back. "It was an accident," Douglas roared, losing his composure entirely. "How many times do I have to say it? It was holiday stress, and you are using it to blackmail us. You have no right to use the police to control this family. And you have no right to use my empathy to control me," I said. I looked past them, through the open front door. Emma and Caleb were standing in the hallway. They had abandoned the movie. They were holding hands, their eyes wide and terrified, watching the 3 adults scream at each other on the front lawn. They looked so small. My heart broke. This was exactly what I had wanted to avoid. I didn't want to be another adult failing them. I sidestepped Rebecca, ignoring her gasp of indignation, and walked up to the doorway. I knelt down on the cold hardwood floor, bringing myself to eye level with the kids. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice to soften, stripping away the anger until all that was left was sad affection. "Emma, Caleb, look at me." They stared at me, Caleb's chin trembling. "I have to go now," I said, "but I want you to listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault. You guys were perfect. You did nothing wrong. The adults are just having a really big disagreement about rules, okay?" "Are you mad at us?" Caleb whispered, clutching his stuffed bear. "No," I said firmly, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "I am not mad at you. I love you both so much. I will call you, okay? I promise." I stood up. I couldn't hug them properly, not with Rebecca hovering like a vulture behind me, ready to snatch them away. I had to leave before things got even uglier. I turned around and walked back down the steps. "If you walk away now," Douglas shouted, his voice cracking, "do not bother coming back for Easter. Do not bother coming back at all. You are done. Harper, You are not a part of this family if you drag our name through the mud." "Is that a threat or a promise?" I asked, not stopping. "You are a traitor!" Rebecca screamed, her voice shrill enough to finally draw the attention of the neighbors across the street. "You are a traitor to your own blood. I hope you rot in that apartment of yours." I got into my car. I slammed the door, shutting out the sound of their voices. I locked it. As I reversed out of the driveway, I saw them standing there, a man in a suit and a woman in fur, looking like the villains in a Dickens novel, united in their hatred of the one person who had finally told them no. The drive back to Portland was a blur of gray highway and white-knuckle tension. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the silence to process the magnitude of what I had just done. I had nuked the bridge. The bridge was not just burning, it was incinerated. When I finally unlocked the door to my apartment, the silence of my own space felt different. It usually felt peaceful. Today, it felt heavy. I threw my keys on the counter and sank onto the sofa. Staring at the blank television screen, I was exhausted, but my mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. I picked up my phone. I hadn't checked social media all day. I had been too busy managing the crisis. But now, the red notification bubble on the Facebook app was glaring at me. I opened it. There, at the very top of my feed, was a post from Rebecca Calloway. It had been posted 2 hours ago, likely while she was in the car speeding back to the house. It was a picture of her and Douglas, taken presumably last Christmas. They looked happy, glowing, perfect. The caption, however, was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive martyrdom. "Christmas is supposed to be a time of giving and family unity. It breaks my heart when the spirit of the season is destroyed by selfishness. We had to cancel our much-needed getaway today because someone in our circle decided their own ego was more important than the safety and happiness of children. It is sad when you realize that some people only care about family when it benefits them. Hug your loved ones tight. You never know when betrayal will come from inside the house. Heartbroken family." First holiday, stress. My jaw dropped. The audacity was breathtaking. She had spun the narrative so completely that she was the victim of a canceled vacation, and I was the villain who had somehow endangered the children. I clicked on the comments. They were already piling up. Rebecca's echo chamber, the PTA moms, the church group ladies, the women who judged everyone else's parenting while ignoring their own issues, was in full swing. Susan M. wrote, "Oh, Rebecca, I am so sorry. Some people in this generation just do not understand the meaning of sacrifice. Sending prayers." Linda K. wrote, "Is this about the person I think it is? If so, I am not surprised. She has always seemed so detached. You do so much for everyone. You deserve a break." Karen B. wrote, "How selfish. Ruining Christmas for the little ones just to make a point? Disgusting behavior. Keep your head up, Mama Bear." I felt the blood rushing to my face, hot and prickly. They were talking about me. They were dissecting my character, painting me as a monster, all based on Rebecca's twisted version of reality. She was publicly shaming me, counting on my silence. She relied on the fact that I never caused drama, that I was the good daughter who would swallow the insult to protect the family name. Douglas's voice echoed in my head. "You are not a part of this family if you drag our name through the mud." I looked at the red mark on my cheek in the mirror reflection of the hallway. I looked at the photo in my camera roll, the one of the note they had left on the kitchen island. "We knew you would do the right thing." They were right. I was going to do the right thing, but their definition of right and mine were about to diverge violently. I opened my laptop. I didn't want to type this on a phone. I wanted a keyboard. I wanted precision. I opened a new post. I didn't tag Rebecca. I didn't tag Douglas. I didn't need to. I started typing. Title: The Price of a Perfect Christmas. For years, I have been the silent gap filler in my family, the unmarried, childless aunt who is expected to have no life, no boundaries, and no voice. I have been the default babysitter for every holiday, every crisis, and every whim, because my time was deemed less valuable than everyone else's. But this year, I said no. I recounted everything. I wrote about the request 2 weeks ago. I wrote about the refusal. I wrote about the moment Rebecca slammed the decorative bow into my face, describing the sound, the pain, and my father's dismissal of it as holiday stress. I wrote about the text messages, the promise of just breakfast, the lie. Then I uploaded the photos. First, the photo of the note on the marble island. The handwriting was clear, the message undeniable. We went ahead. We know you will do the right thing. Next, the photo of the empty driveway with the timestamp, 8:15 in the morning. Then, a screenshot of the call log showing my outgoing call to the police dispatcher that I almost made, and the incoming call from Douglas when he realized I was serious. I continued typing. My father and stepmother left a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old alone in a house for 4 hours on Christmas morning. They got on a plane, assuming that my guilt would be a stronger prison than their locked doors. They bet on my compliance. They bet that I would never expose them because I was too afraid of ruining the family image. They were wrong. They came back only because I gave them a 60-minute countdown before I called the cops, and when they arrived, they did not hug their children. They screamed at me for costing them $5,000 in plane tickets. I am sharing this because I am done being the villain in a story where I am the only one acting like an adult. I am done being the selfish one for refusing to be abused. If demanding that children not be abandoned makes me a traitor, then I will wear that title gladly. To everyone commenting on Rebecca's post about sacrifice, you are right. Family requires sacrifice, but it does not require martyrdom, and it certainly does not require silence. I read it over. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a terrifying sense of liberation. It was the nuclear option. Once I hit that blue button, there was no going back. The Calloway reputation in Salem would be cratered. My relationship with my father would be over. I thought of Caleb asking, "Are you mad at us?" I thought of Douglas saying, "It is just holiday stress." I hit post. I closed the laptop and went to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of wine. My hands were still shaking. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started buzzing continuously, a relentless, vibrating hum against the countertop. I picked it up. The notifications were rolling in so fast I couldn't read them. Shared. 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 Comment. Oh my God. Is this real? I saw Rebecca's post earlier and thought something smelled fishy. This is insane. Comment. I am a social worker. This is abandonment. You should have called the cops anyway. Comment. As the oldest daughter who was always the built-in nanny, I feel this in my soul. Good for you. Strangers were finding it. Friends from college were sharing it. People in Salem who knew my father were tagging each other. The algorithm had picked it up, feeding on the high-drama keywords and the shocking photographic evidence. Then, the text messages started. Maya. Harper, you did it. Holy cow, it is at 200 shares already. Cousin Jenna. Just saw your post. Is this true? Uncle Doug actually left them? And then, a text from a number I had blocked, but which somehow managed to leave a voicemail notification. Douglas. I didn't listen to it. I didn't have to. I knew what it said. I watched the share count climb. 500, 800, 1,000. The silence in my apartment was gone, replaced by the roar of the internet. I had lit the match, and now, from the safety of my living room, I watched the house of cards that was the Calloway family image burn to the ground. The internet has a short memory, but while it is paying attention, it is a ravenous beast. I had fed it a steak, the story of my abandonment, the photos of the note, the time-stamped proof, and for about 12 hours, I watched the beast tear my father and stepmother apart. The validation was intoxicating. Thousands of strangers were affirming my reality, telling me I was brave, telling me that what happened to me was abuse. But I had forgotten that a wounded animal is most dangerous when it is backed into a corner, and Rebecca Calloway was nothing if not a survivor of her own carefully curated narrative. The counterattack did not come in the form of a legal letter or a tearful apology. It came as a notification on my phone the following morning, just as I was trying to force down a piece of toast. Rebecca Calloway tagged you in a post. I felt a cold drop of dread slide down my spine. I opened the app. Rebecca had not addressed the abandonment accusations directly. She knew she could not win on facts because I had receipts. Instead, she had decided to attack the credibility of the witness. The post was a long, rambling block of text, devoid of her usual emojis and hashtags. It is heartbreaking when a family member suffers from long-term mental health struggles. She began, "We have tried for years to help Harper. Ever since she was a child, she has struggled to distinguish reality from her own internal narratives. We have paid for therapy. We have supported her through her episodes. But it seems that this Christmas, her delusions have finally spilled over into the public sphere. The story she is telling is a fabrication born of a deep-seated need for attention that stems from unresolved childhood trauma. We are not angry, we are just worried. Please pray for her." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. In one paragraph, she had dismissed my evidence as delusions and painted herself as the long-suffering saint dealing with a crazy daughter. But it was the comment section that gutted me. There, right at the top, was a comment from my father, Douglas. "Harper has always had a hard time adjusting emotionally since her mother died." He wrote, "We have walked on eggshells for years trying not to trigger her. It is a tragedy that she is using her pain to hurt the family that has done nothing but try to protect her." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. He was using my mother. He was using the most painful, earth-shattering event of my life, the death of my mom when I was 16, as a weapon to discredit me. He was framing my grief as insanity. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone through the window, but they were not done. An hour later, Rebecca posted again. This time, it was not just text, it was a photo. It was a grainy, low-light picture of a piece of paper. I zoomed in, squinting. It was an invoice, a medical invoice from a child psychologist, dated 15 years ago. It listed my name, my age, 13, and a billing code for grief counseling and behavioral adjustment. "We have the receipts, too," Rebecca captioned it. "We have been paying for professional help for decades. It is not her fault she is unwell, but it is dangerous to believe everything you read from an unstable source." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. That was private. That was my medical history. I was a minor when I saw that therapist. I was a grieving, confused teenager who had just lost her mother. And now, that vulnerability was being plastered on Facebook to prove that I was a liar. "This is illegal," I whispered to the empty room. "This has to be illegal." But the real blow, the one that brought me to my knees, came that evening. I was sitting on my floor, surrounded by printed screenshots, trying to organize my thoughts, when my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Maya. "Do not look at Instagram," she wrote. "Seriously, do not look." Which, of course, meant I had to look immediately. Rebecca had created a story highlight titled "The Truth." Inside, there were photos of a book, a small, spiral-bound notebook with a faded blue cover. I stopped breathing. I knew that notebook. I had left it in the bottom drawer of my old desk in the Salem house. It was my diary from when I was 17, the year after my mother died, the year Douglas married Rebecca. She had gone into my old room. She had rifled through my things, and now she was posting photographs of the pages. I swiped through the story, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Page 1, a scrawled, tear-stained entry about how much I missed my mom's cooking. Page 2, an entry where I wrote, "I hate her. I hate the way she looks at Dad. I hate that he smiles at her like Mom never existed. I feel like a ghost in this house." Page 3, a particularly humiliating entry where I talked about feeling ugly compared to Rebecca, about how I felt invisible and worthless. And on each photo, Rebecca had added her own commentary in bright pink text. "See?" she wrote over my teenage confession of loneliness. "She has always hated me. This is not about the kids. This is about a jealous stepdaughter who never grew up. So sad. She rode over my grief. She has been playing the victim since 2008. Here is the real Harper. The final caption read, bitter, angry, obsessed with being the center of attention. I felt a sensation of violation so profound it was physical. My skin crawled. Those were my darkest, most private thoughts. They were the raw, bleeding words of a traumatized teenager trying to make sense of a world that had fallen apart. And now, they were content. They were gossip. Strangers were reading about my 17-year-old self's insecurities and laughing, reacting with shock emojis. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I sat on the cold tile floor, shivering. I felt stripped naked. They had taken my adulthood, my career, my competence, and stripped it all away, leaving only that sad, angry little girl in the diary. They were rewriting my history to fit their defense strategy. My phone rang. It was Maya. "I told you not to look," she said, her voice hard. "She found my diary," I croaked. "Maya, she is posting my diary." "I know," Maya said. "I am reporting every single post for harassment, but Instagram is slow. Harper, listen to me. This is not a family squabble anymore. This is not a flame war. This is revenge porn. But with trauma instead of sex, you need a lawyer, now." I can't afford a big lawsuit," I stammered. "I am just a marketing manager." "You cannot afford not to," Maya said. "They are destroying your reputation. Douglas is basically calling you clinically insane to the whole town. You need to scorch the earth. Harper, you need a shark." She sent me a contact card. Alicia Monroe, family law and defamation. "She is expensive," Maya said, "but she eats bullies for breakfast. Call her." The next morning, I was sitting in a waiting room in downtown Portland that smelled of expensive leather and intimidation. I was wearing my best blazer, but I felt small. I felt like the unstable teenager Rebecca claimed I was. Alicia Monroe did not look like a shark. She looked like a librarian who did CrossFit. She was 50, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that probably cost more than my first car. She ushered me into her office and listened for 20 minutes without interrupting. I showed her the holiday stress post. I showed her the abandonment evidence. Then, with shaking hands, I showed her the screenshots of the medical bills and the diary pages. Alicia's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She leaned back in her chair, tapping a silver pen against her chin. "Okay," she said. Her voice was cool, crisp, and utterly devoid of pity. I liked it immediately. Pity was useless to me right now. I needed ammunition. "First," Alicia said, "let us address the medical records. Posting a minor's mental health records, even if they are parents, for the purpose of public humiliation and damaging your reputation, that is a privacy tort. Public disclosure of private facts. It is actionable." She pointed to the diary screenshots. This is intentional infliction of emotional distress. It is also invasion of privacy. They invaded your personal space, your old room, which, given that you are an adult who does not live there, they can argue is their house, but the contents were your property. Posting it? That is malice. "They are saying I am crazy," I said. "They are saying I made it all up." "Of course they are," Alicia said, dismissing their defense with a wave of her hand. "That is the narcissist's playbook. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. They are trying to goad you into a public screaming match so you look unstable. We are not going to scream. We are going to file." She opened a legal pad. "We are going to file for a restraining order based on harassment. We are going to file a civil suit for defamation and invasion of privacy, and we are going to go after the money. Not because you need it, but because that is the only language people like Douglas and Rebecca understand." She paused, looking at the photo of my bruised cheek that I had taken right after the incident. "Now, let us talk about the assault," she said. "The bow. You said Rebecca hit you. Douglas claims it was an accident. Holiday stress." "It was not an accident," I said firmly. "She ripped it off the box and swung it. She aimed." It is your word against theirs, Alicia said, playing devil's advocate. 2 against 1. They will say you were aggressive. They will say you stepped into her space. Unless... She tapped the pen on the desk again. Where did this happen? In the house? In the living room, I said, near the Christmas tree. Where is the tree? It is in the front bay window, right next to the foyer. And where were you standing? I was backing away toward the door. I was near the entryway. Alicia narrowed her eyes. Describe the entryway. Does it open directly into the living room? Yes, I said. It is an open floor plan. You walk in the front door, and the living room is right there on the left. The front door, Alicia repeated. She leaned forward. Does your father have a security system? I blinked. Yes, he is obsessed with it. He got a new one last year. It has sensors on all the windows, motion detectors. Does it have a camera? Alicia asked. A video doorbell? A Nest? A Ring? I froze. A memory flashed in my mind. Last Thanksgiving. Douglas standing on the porch, showing Logan the new setup on his phone. It is great, he had bragged. Wide-angle lens, 180 degrees. I can see the Amazon delivery guy's pores. I can see everything from the driveway to the back of the hallway. To the back of the hallway. The living room was visible from the hallway. Yes, I breathed. He has a Ring Doorbell Pro. He bragged about the wide angle. If the front door was even slightly open, or if the angle is wide enough to catch the window. Alicia interrupted. If the camera records audio. It records audio, I said. I remember him showing me. He could talk to people at the door. Alicia smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. If the camera is active, she said, it records motion. If you were arguing, you were moving. If Rebecca lunged at you, that is motion, even if the visual is blocked by the door. The audio would be crystal clear. The crack of the bow, the scream, your father saying, "It is just holiday stress." I sat up straight. But he controls the footage. He would never give it to me. He does not have to give it to you, Alicia said, pulling a fresh document from her drawer. That is what a subpoena is for. We are going to file an emergency motion to preserve evidence. If he deletes that footage after we serve him, he goes to jail for spoliation of evidence. And trust me, men like Douglas Calloway are terrified of jail. She looked me in the eye. Harper, if that camera was on, we do not just have a lawsuit. We have a smoking gun. They did not just smear a crazy daughter. They assaulted a woman and then launched a calculated campaign to destroy her sanity to cover it up. She handed me a pen. Sign the retainer, she said. Let's go get that footage. I looked at the paper. I looked at the pen. For the first time in 3 days, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the person Rebecca was terrified I would become. I signed my name. Alicia Monroe leaned across her mahogany desk, her fingers interlaced on top of a stack of manila folders that had grown exponentially in the last 48 hours. The office was quiet, insulated from the rain battering the glass of the high-rise window, but the energy inside was electric. Here is the reality of the situation. Harper, Alicia said, her voice calm and surgical. Right now, this is a he said, she said scenario playing out in the court of public opinion. They are painting a picture of you as a volatile, mentally unstable woman who is weaponizing a family misunderstanding to win a defamation suit, and more importantly, to get you the protection order you need. We have to dismantle that narrative. We do not just need to prove they are lying. We need to prove that you are the rational actor in a chaotic environment. She tapped the legal pad in front of her. We need the video, she stated, and we need to secure every single deleted comment, every edited caption, and every story post before Rebecca wipes the internet clean. I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to their blows, I was preparing to strike back. I reached out to Jamie, a back-end developer at Northline Spark, who owed me a favor after I covered for him during a botched client rollout last summer. I didn't tell him the whole sob story, just that I needed a digital archive of a harassment campaign, Jamie didn't ask questions. He set up a script that scraped Rebecca's Instagram, Facebook, and the local community pages every 10 minutes. By the next morning, Jamie sent me a Dropbox link. It contained hundreds of screenshots, timestamps, and metadata. It captured comments Rebecca had liked, nasty little jabs about ungrateful children, and then unliked an hour later when she realized they looked too petty. It captured the edits she made to her initial post, softening the language to sound more victimized. It was a digital paper trail of malice. But the video was the holy grail, and Douglas knew it. Alicia sent a formal preservation letter to my father's attorney, a family friend named George, who specialized in estate planning and was woefully out of his depth in a high-stakes tort case. The letter demanded the immediate surrender of all security footage from the residence on the morning of December 24th between the hours of 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. The response was immediate and predictable. Douglas refused. "They are claiming it is private property," Alicia told me over the phone, her tone dry. "They say the camera captures the interior of their home and releasing it would violate their privacy rights. They are also claiming the footage might have been automatically overwritten due to a system glitch." "That is a lie," I said, gripping my phone. "Douglas bragged that the cloud storage keeps 30 days of footage. He pays a premium for it." "I know," Alicia said. "And George knows that I know, which is why I just filed an emergency motion with the court. If that footage disappears, the judge will instruct the jury to assume the worst, that it showed exactly what we claim it showed. It is called an adverse inference instruction. Douglas does not want that." It took 2 days of legal wrestling, 2 days of me sitting in my apartment, jumping every time my phone buzzed, wondering if my father would actually destroy evidence to protect his wife. But Douglas was a man who cared about appearances, and he cared about his own skin. He was terrified of a judge holding him in contempt. On Thursday afternoon, a courier arrived at Alicia's office with a thumb drive. I drove downtown immediately. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I was about to watch the worst moment of my life replay in high definition, but I needed to see it. I needed to know that my memory wasn't playing tricks on me. Rebecca's gaslighting had been so effective that a small, treacherous part of my brain had started to whisper, "Did she really hit you? Or did you just walk into her hand? Was it really that bad?" Alicia met me at the door and led me to the conference room. She plugged the drive into her laptop and connected it to the large wall-mounted screen. "Are you ready?" she asked, her hand hovering over the spacebar. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded thin. She pressed play. The video feed appeared. It was the fisheye view from the Ring camera mounted above the front door. The quality was startlingly crisp, capturing the wide expanse of the foyer and a significant portion of the living room to the left. The morning light from the 24th of December streamed in through the bay windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I saw myself enter the frame. I looked tense, my shoulders hunched. I saw Rebecca floating around in her cashmere dress, phone in hand. The audio was clear, picking up the crunch of footsteps and the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I watched the argument unfold. I saw myself standing by the dining table, which was visible in the far back of the frame, and then moving into the living room. I heard the voices rise. "You are not going anywhere!" Rebecca's voice on the recording was shrill, distorted slightly by the microphone but unmistakable. I watched as she lunged toward the tree. I saw her rip the bow off the gift box. The camera caught the glitter sparkling in the sun. Then she advanced. On the screen, I stepped back, my hands raised in a defensive posture. I was clearly trying to de-escalate. I was backing toward the foyer, toward the camera. Rebecca followed. She was holding the bow like a tennis racket. "You owe us," she screamed. And then she swung. I flinched in the conference room, my body reacting to the memory. On the screen, the impact was brutal. The heavy, structured bow connected with the side of my face with a sickening thwack that echoed through the speakers. My head snapped to the side. I stumbled back, almost falling out of the frame. The silence that followed on the tape was heavy. Then, my father's voice. He walked into the frame from the kitchen, holding his coffee cup. He didn't run to me. He didn't yell at her. He just looked annoyed. "Rebecca, honey, put the bow down," he said. Then he turned to the version of me on the screen, who was clutching her face in shock. "Don't do this. Harper, it is just holiday stress. Don't make a scene." Alicia paused the video. The image froze on my father's face. Indifferent, cowardly, complicit. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. A tear slid down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was relief. Pure, washing relief. "I am not crazy," I whispered. "No," Alicia said, her eyes hard as flint. "You are not. That is assault and battery, clear as day. And your father's statement? That establishes that he witnessed it and chose to minimize it. It destroys their claim that you were the aggressor." She saved the file, creating 3 backups immediately. "This wins the restraining order," Alicia said, "and it gives us significant leverage for the defamation suit. If they try to claim you are lying about the abuse, we play this for the jury. Rebecca will look like a monster." But Alicia wasn't done. She was a pit bull, and she had caught a scent. "While we were waiting for the video," she said, opening a second folder, "I did some digging, standard due diligence. I wanted to know where Rebecca gets the money to fund this perfect suburbanite lifestyle, considering she hasn't held a job in 15 years. "She uses Dad's money," I said. "Douglas pays for everything." "He does," Alicia agreed. "But I found something else. Are you aware of the Callaway Memorial Foundation?" I nodded. "It is a small charity Dad started after Mom died. It is supposed to give grants to local art students. Mom was a painter." "Right," Alicia said. "Well, it turns out Rebecca has been the primary signatory on the foundation's account for the last 5 years. Douglas signed over power of attorney for the fund so he wouldn't have to deal with the paperwork." Alicia slid a spreadsheet across the table. It was a dense grid of numbers, highlighting a series of transactions. "This is a forensic accounting of the foundation's last 3 fiscal years," Alicia said. "I have a contact at the bank who owed me a favor, strictly off the record for now, but enough to know where to look when we subpoena the records." She pointed to a recurring monthly transfer. $3,000 a month to RC Consulting. The address for us Consulting is a P.O. box in Portland that is registered to Rebecca Callaway. My stomach dropped. She is paying herself? "Consulting fees are legal for charity administrators," Alicia said. "But look at these expense reimbursements. $500 at a luxury spa in downtown Salem, listed as donor meeting. $1,200 for a networking dinner at a steakhouse where the receipt shows only 2 guests, and the date coincides with your father's birthday." Alicia flipped the page. "And here's the big one. Last year, the foundation transferred $15,000 to a contractor for office renovations. The foundation does not have an office. It is run out of your father's den." But curiously, that was the same month Rebecca posted on Instagram about her brand new, custom-designed walk-in closet. I stared at the numbers. They blurred together into a picture of grotesque entitlement. That money was supposed to help kids go to art school. It was supposed to honor my mother, a woman who bought her clothes at thrift stores and taught free art classes at the library. Rebecca was using my dead mother's name to buy herself closets and facials. "This is fraud," I said. The anger was different now. It wasn't the hot, reactive anger of the assault. It was cold. It was calculating. "It is embezzlement," Alicia corrected, "and it is tax fraud. If the IRS looks at this, Rebecca goes to federal prison. Douglas, as the founder, would be liable for lack of oversight. He could lose his license to practice as an architect. He could lose the house." Alicia leaned back, crossing her arms. "We are not going to call the IRS. Not yet. This is our nuclear deterrent." She looked me in the eye. "Harper, right now. They think they are fighting a PR war. They think if they post enough sad stories about your mental health, you will break. They do not know we have the video. And they certainly do not know we have the ledger." "So what do?" I asked. "We draft a complaint," Alicia said. "We lay out the assault, the defamation, the invasion of privacy, and then, In the draft settlement offer, we include a clause about financial irregularities in the family trust. We let them know that if they want to go to war, we will not just take their reputation, we will take their freedom. I looked at the screen again, at the image of Rebecca swinging the bow, and Douglas turning his back. For years, I had been the little girl waiting for permission to sit at the table. I had been the convenient prop, the free labor, the emotional punching bag. I had let them define me because I was afraid of being an orphan. But looking at the evidence of their cruelty and their greed, I realized I had been an orphan for a long time. They hadn't protected me. They had consumed me. "Do it," I said. "Draft the complaint. Include everything, the diary, the medical records, the bow, the money." I stood up. I felt taller. The bruise on my cheek still throbbed, but the pain felt distant now, like a memory of a person I used to be. "I want my name back," I said, "and I want them to know that the holiday stress excuse just expired." Alicia smiled, a genuine, terrifying shark smile. "I will have the courier deliver the papers tomorrow morning," she said. "Merry Christmas, Harper." "Merry Christmas, Alicia." I walked out of the office and into the rain. I didn't run to my car. I walked slowly, letting the cold water wash over me. I took out my phone and opened the group chat with my friends, the ones I was supposed to be on a road trip with. "I am sorry I missed the trip," I typed, "but I think I am finally free." I hit send, and for the first time in years, I believed it. The investigation was over. The war was about to begin. The summons was served on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the invisible fault lines running through the bedrock of Salem society had cracked open, forcing everyone to choose a side. In a town the size of Salem, a lawsuit between a prominent architect and his daughter does not stay contained within the sterile walls of a courthouse. It leaks. It seeps into the country club locker rooms. It drips onto the checkout counters at Whole Foods, and it pools in the hushed corners of the church sanctuary. I had expected the silence of ostracization. Instead, I got noise. My inbox became a war zone. On one side were the traditionalists, the people who believed that biology was a binding contract that superseded all abuse. They sent me messages filled with biblical quotes about honoring thy father and mother, conveniently leaving out the verses about fathers not provoking their children to wrath. They called me ungrateful, messy, and attention-seeking. To them, my crime was not that I was lying, but that I had dragged the private business of a respectable family into the vulgar light of day. But on the other side, a quiet army began to form. I received emails from women I barely knew, former neighbors, old classmates, the barista at the coffee shop my father frequented. They wrote to me about their own heavy silences. They wrote about the burdens of being the good daughter, the unpaid caregiver, the family peacemaker who was expected to set herself on fire to keep everyone else warm. "I believe you." A woman named Sarah wrote. She was the wife of one of my father's golf buddies. "I saw the way Rebecca spoke to you at the summer barbecue 3 years ago. I wanted to say something then. I am sorry I did not." These messages were oxygen. They kept me breathing as the legal machinery began to grind forward. The impact on Douglas and Rebecca was immediate, and it was not just social, it was financial. Alicia had been right to target the money. The mention of financial irregularities in the initial complaint had spooked the herd. I heard through the grapevine, specifically from Mrs. Gable, the town's most efficient gossip and my former piano teacher, that the board of the Callaway Memorial Foundation had called an emergency meeting. Douglas had walked in expecting to smooth things over with his usual charm and a round of expensive scotch. Instead, he was met with a forensic auditor. Apparently, the board members were not thrilled that their charitable donations, meant for struggling art students, had potentially funded Rebecca's closet renovation and spa days. They had frozen the accounts pending an internal investigation. For a man like Douglas, who wore his reputation like a suit of armor, this was a wound deeper than any emotional betrayal. He was being humiliated by his own ledger. Rebecca, however, did not retreat. She pivoted. If Douglas was the crumbling king, Rebecca was the tragic heroine in an opera of her own design. She began appearing at the Wednesday night community dinners at the church, a place she usually avoided because the coffee was instant. She wore no makeup. She dressed in somber grays. She sat in the front pew, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, telling anyone who would listen about the heartbreak of being betrayed by a daughter she had tried so hard to love. "She wants to destroy us," Rebecca would whisper, loud enough for 3 rows to hear. "She is jealous of the happiness we built. We offered her everything, but some souls are just broken beyond repair." She was playing the role of the martyr, banking on the fact that people prefer a comfortable lie to an uncomfortable truth. She wanted them to see me as the villain, so they wouldn't have to look too closely at the bruises on the family portrait. But cracks were appearing in her performance, and the biggest crack was named Logan. My brother had been in Hawaii when the bomb dropped. He had returned to a scorched earth. Initially, he had stayed silent, paralyzed by the conflicting narratives. To Logan, Douglas was the hero who had kept the family afloat after Mom died, and Rebecca was the difficult but necessary glue that held the household together. He didn't want to believe that the glue was toxic. Then, the toxicity leaked onto his own children. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was sitting on my living room floor, organizing evidence binders with Alicia, when my phone rang. The caller ID said Logan. I stared at it. We hadn't spoken since I drove away from the house on Christmas morning. "Answer it," Alicia said, not looking up from her laptop. "But remember, you are recording. Put it on speaker." I pressed the green button. "Hello, Logan?" "Harper." His voice sounded exhausted. There was no anger, just a heavy, baffled weariness. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. No spin, no lawyers." "I have never lied to you, Logan," I said. "Emma came home from school today crying," he said. "Apparently, one of the moms was talking about the lawsuit in the pickup line, and her kid heard it. Her kid told Emma that her Aunt Harper is trying to put her grandma in jail because she is a vindictive witch. That is a direct quote from a 7-year-old. My stomach turned over. "I am so sorry, Logan. I never wanted the kids to hear that." "I went to Mom and Dad's house to ask them about it," Logan continued. "I asked Rebecca why people were saying things like that. I expected her to be upset for Emma. Instead, she looked at me and said, 'Well, maybe Emma needs to know what kind of person her aunt really is so she does not get hurt later.'" The silence on the line was thick. "She used my daughter," Logan said, his voice hardening. "She used a 9-year-old's pain to score a point against you, and Dad just sat there and nodded." "That is what they do." "Logan," I said gently, "everyone is collateral damage to them, even Emma." "I asked Dad about the bow," Logan said. "He told me it was a gesture. He said it barely touched you." "I sent you the video, Logan," I said. "Did you watch it?" "I couldn't," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I was afraid that if I watched it, I would have to burn the house down." "Watch it," I said. "Please, for Emma. You need to know who you are leaving your children with." He hung up without saying goodbye. But 10 minutes later, I received a text. "I watched it. I am sorry. I am so sorry." It wasn't a full defection. He wasn't standing beside me at the plaintiff's table yet, but the blindfold had been ripped off. The hardest part, however, was not dealing with the adults. It was the children. Alicia and I had made a strategic decision early on. We would not use Emma and Caleb as pawns. We made it clear in every filing that I was not seeking custody, nor was I trying to alienate the grandparents. I was seeking protection and damages for myself. I wanted to be the one adult in the room who wasn't treating them like leverage. But I missed them. It was a physical ache, a hollow space in my chest where their noise and chaos used to be. "You can call them," Alicia said one evening, seeing me stare at a picture of Caleb on my fridge. "But keep it light. No case talk, no bashing the grandparents, just love. If Rebecca tries to block it, we add parental alienation to the file, but I suspect Logan will facilitate it." She was right. Logan arranged a FaceTime call on his phone while he was at the park with the kids. away from Rebecca's prying ears. When their faces popped up on my screen, pixelated and bright against the gray Oregon sky, I felt tears prick the back of my eyes. "Aunt Harper," Caleb yelled, shoving his face into the camera. "Did you move to the moon? Daddy says you are busy with work." "Not the moon, buddy," I laughed, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Just back in Portland. I miss you guys like crazy." "Are you still mad at Grandma?" Emma asked. She was older, sharper. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much tension in the last few weeks. I took a deep breath. This was the tightrope. "Emma, look at me," I said. "You know how sometimes at school, two friends have a really big disagreement, and they have to take a break from playing together until they can figure out the rules?" She nodded. "That is what is happening with the adults," I said. "We are having a big disagreement about the rules. It has nothing to do with you, not one little bit. You are perfect. I love you, and Grandma loves you, and Daddy loves you. We are just trying to fix the rules so everyone is safe, okay?" "Will you come back for my birthday?" she asked. My heart shattered. Her birthday was in February. "I am going to try my absolute best," I said, "but even if I cannot be there at the party, I will be thinking of you, and I will send the biggest present you have ever seen." We talked for 10 more minutes about Minecraft and school lunches. When the call ended, I sat in my silent apartment and cried for half an hour. I felt guilty. I felt like I had abandoned them, even though I knew that staying would have meant teaching them that abuse was acceptable. The night before the first hearing, I did not sleep. I paced my apartment, the floorboards groaning under my feet. The city lights of Portland were blurry through the rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow, I would walk into a courtroom in Salem. I would sit at a mahogany table, and across the aisle, I would see the man who taught me how to tie my shoes and the woman who had promised to take care of us. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the harsh vanity lights. I looked at my face. The bruise from the bow had faded to a faint, yellowish shadow on my cheekbone, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But the memory of the impact was still vivid. I could still feel the shock, the sting of the plastic mesh, the humiliation of my father looking away. I looked at the woman in the mirror. I saw the lines of exhaustion around her eyes. I saw the fear, but I also saw something else. I saw the 17-year-old girl who used to cry in her pillow, wishing she could disappear so she wouldn't be a burden. I saw the 20-year-old who canceled dates to babysit. I saw the 30-year-old who bought expensive scotch for a father who didn't care. And I realized that tomorrow, I wasn't just fighting Rebecca. I was fighting that version of myself. I was fighting the Harper who desperately wanted to be good, to be chosen, to be loved. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Alicia. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is game day." Then a second text. "Remember what we talked about. When you walk into that room, do not look at them as Dad and Mom. Do not look for their approval. You are not the child in the booster seat anymore. You are the plaintiff. You are the one setting the terms. If you look for the father you wanted, you will lose. Look for the defendant named Douglas. That is the only way you walk out whole." I put the phone down. I splashed cold water on my face. "Defendant," I whispered to the mirror. "Defendant Douglas Calloway. Defendant Rebecca Calloway." I repeated it until the words lost their emotional sting and became just legal terminology. I walked to my closet and pulled out my suit. It was navy blue, sharp, tailored. It looked like armor. I was terrified. My hands were shaking, but as I turned off the lights and lay in the dark, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for Christmas morning to see if I'd been good enough. I was waiting for the sun to rise so I could tell them exactly what they were worth. The Marion County Courthouse smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and old anxiety. It was a smell I had never associated with my family. The Calloways belonged in places that smelled of cedar chips and expensive perfume. Not in these hallowed, fluorescent-lit halls where marriages went to die and criminals waited for sentencing. The courtroom was packed. I kept my eyes fixed on the grain of the oak table in front of me, refusing to turn around, but I could feel the heat of the bodies behind the bar. The viral nature of my post, combined with my father's prominence in the local architecture scene, had turned a civil hearing into a spectator sport. There were reporters from the local paper, bloggers who covered suburban crime, and half the congregation of the First Methodist Church, divided neatly into Team Rebecca and Team Harper. I sat next to Alicia. She looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, her spine straight as a steel rod. On the other side of the aisle, my father and stepmother sat with their attorney, George Reynolds. Douglas looked gray, his usual ruddy complexion drained away. Rebecca was dressed in a soft, powder blue cardigan, a calculated choice to make her look harmless, maternal, soft. George Reynolds stood up to make his opening statement. He was an old-school lawyer, the kind who relied on bluster and the good old boys network. He walked toward the judge, a stern woman named Judge Sterling who peered over her reading glasses with zero patience. "Your Honor," Reynolds began, his voice booming, "this case is a tragedy, not because of any abuse, but because a private family disagreement has been weaponized by a troubled young woman. The plaintiff, Harper Calloway, has a documented history of emotional instability. She has been in and out of therapy since she was a teenager. She is sensitive. She perceives slights where there are none. What happened on Christmas Eve was regrettable. Yes, but it was not assault. It was a frantic gesture by an exhausted mother, twisted into a crime by a daughter seeking attention." I gripped my pen so hard I thought the plastic would snap. Troubled, sensitive, attention-seeking. It was the same narrative they had spun online, now given the weight of legal argument. When Rebecca took the stand, she was the picture of fragile remorse. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue before the clerk even finished swearing her in. "Mrs. Calloway," Reynolds asked gently, "tell us about the morning of December 24th. "It was chaos," Rebecca whispered, leaning into the microphone. "We were so stressed about the flight. The weather reports were terrible. And Harper, she was just so angry when she arrived. She started shouting about her vacation. She was screaming at Douglas." "And the incident with the bow?" Reynolds prompted. "I was trying to emphasize a point," Rebecca said, her voice trembling. "I picked up the bow from the gift box. I waved my hand. I might have grazed her cheek. It was an accident. I would never hurt her. I love her like my own." She looked at the judge, tears spilling over. "I was horrified when she ran out. And then, when she threatened to call the police on us, on Christmas, I was terrified. She threatened to ruin the holiday for my grandchildren just to punish us." A ripple of sympathy went through the gallery. I heard a few murmurs. She was good. She was terrifyingly good. "Your witness?" Reynolds said, looking smug. Alicia stood up. She didn't walk toward the witness stand. She walked toward the large monitor set up on the side of the room. "Mrs. Calloway," Alicia said, her voice cool and pleasant, "you stated that you waved your hand and grazed the plaintiff. Is that correct?" "Yes," Rebecca sniffed. "It was a gesture." "And you stated that my client was the one screaming?" "Yes, she was hysterical." "And you claim that my client's reaction, leaving the house and threatening police action, was a disproportionate response to a minor accident?" "Absolutely," Rebecca said, gaining confidence. "It was dramatic. It was cruel." Alicia nodded. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to introduce Exhibit A, security footage from the defendant's residence, taken at 9:20 in the morning on December 24th. Reynolds jumped up. "Objection! Privacy!" "Overruled," Judge Sterling said, looking bored. "It was submitted in discovery. Mr. Reynolds, sit down." Alicia pressed a button on her laptop. The screen flickered to life. The audio was loud, loud enough to startle the people in the back row. "You are not going anywhere." The voice on the recording was not mine. It was Rebecca's. It was a shriek, raw and ugly. On the screen, the courtroom watched as the woman in the powder blue cardigan, the same woman currently dabbing her eyes, lunged at the camera. They saw her rip the heavy, glittered bow off the box. They saw the snarl on her face. And then, the swing. Thwack! The sound echoed off the high ceilings of the courtroom. It was wet and heavy. It was the undeniable sound of violence. On the screen, my head snapped back. I stumbled. I clutched my face. The courtroom went dead silent. The sympathy in the room evaporated instantly, replaced by a collective intake of breath. Then, the camera captured Douglas walking into the frame. He looked at me. He looked at his wife. "Rebecca, honey, put the bow down." His voice on the tape was calm, dismissive. "Don't do this, Harper. It is just holiday stress. Don't make a scene." Alicia paused the video. The frame froze on Douglas's face, his hand raised in a gesture of annoyance, not concern. Alicia turned back to Rebecca. Rebecca was pale. The tissue was crumpled in her hand. "Mrs. Calloway," Alicia said, her voice stripping the paint off the walls. "Does that look like a graze to you?" Rebecca opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Does that look like an accident?" Alicia pressed. "Because from where I am standing, that looks like a full-force backhand with a weighted object aimed directly at your stepdaughter's face." I was emotional," Rebecca stammered. "It looks worse on video." "No," Alicia said. "It looks exactly like what it is. Assault?" "I have no further questions for this witness," Alicia said, turning her back on Rebecca as if she were dismissed help. Next, it was Douglas's turn. My father walked to the stand. He tried to project an air of authority, adjusting his tie, nodding respectfully to the judge, but I knew him. I saw the sweat beading on his upper lip. "Mr. Calloway," Alicia began, "we just watched a video where your wife struck your daughter. Your immediate reaction was not to call for help, not to check for injury, but to tell your daughter not to make a scene. Can you explain that?" "Well," Douglas cleared his throat, "you have to understand the context. Christmas morning is high pressure. Rebecca works very hard to make it perfect. Tensions were high. I was trying to de-escalate the situation." "De-escalate?" Alicia raised an eyebrow. "By telling the victim of the assault that it was just holiday stress?" "It was a figure of speech," Douglas said, forcing a chuckle that sounded like dry leaves crunching. "Families fight. We are passionate people. Harper knows that. We all get a little heated during the holidays." Judge Sterling leaned forward. She took off her reading glasses. The movement was slow and deliberate. "Mr. Calloway," the judge said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to the back of the room. "Are you suggesting to this court that physical violence against an adult woman is an acceptable byproduct of holiday stress?" Douglas froze. He looked at the judge, then at George Reynolds, who was staring at his shoes. No, Your Honor, of course not. But what?" Judge Sterling asked. "Is there a specific level of holiday cheer that justifies hitting someone in the face with a plastic ornament?" "No," Douglas whispered. He looked small. For the first time in my life, the giant who had ruled my world looked incredibly small. "Let us move on," Alicia said, sensing the kill. "Mr. Calloway, after Harper left, she posted about the incident online. In response, you and your wife engaged in what can only be described as a scorched earth campaign to destroy her reputation. Is that correct?" "We were defending ourselves," Douglas said, regaining a bit of his defensive posture. "Harper was lying. She was omitting facts." "Let us look at how you defended yourself," Alicia said. She clicked the remote. The screen changed. Now, displayed in 10-foot-high resolution, were the screenshots of the diary pages. My teenage handwriting, magnified for the world to see. "I feel invisible. I hate her. I wish Dad would look at me." Beside them were the medical invoices from when I was 13. "Mr. Calloway," Alicia said, "these are the private medical records of a minor child. Your child. You allowed your wife to post these on Instagram to 3,000 followers. Why?" "To show her history," Douglas said, his voice rising. "To show she has always been unstable." "Unstable?" Alicia pointed to the screen. "These are records of grief counseling, from the year her mother died. Are you saying that a 13-year-old girl grieving her dead mother is unstable?" That is not what I meant, Douglas sputtered. And the diary? Alicia clicked again. The image of Rebecca's mocking captions appeared. So sad. Playing the victim since 2008. You allowed your wife to take the private, agonizing thoughts of your teenage daughter and turn them into internet fodder to save your own reputation? Alicia asked. Is that also holiday stress, Mr. Calloway? Rebecca was angry, Douglas said weakly. She felt attacked. So you sacrificed your daughter to appease your wife, Alicia said. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. Objection, Reynolds shouted. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Sterling said, though she didn't look like she meant it. Counsel, move on. I have nothing further, Alicia said. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand. My legs felt heavy, but my hands were steady. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down and looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the reporters scribbling furiously. I saw the neighbors who had called me selfish now looking down at their laps, unable to meet my eyes. Harper, Alicia said gently, why did you go back to the house on Christmas morning? Because my father promised me it would just be breakfast, I said. My voice was clear. He promised me I wouldn't have to babysit. He promised me he would respect my time. And why was that promise important? Because for 15 years, I have not been a daughter, I said. I have been a resource. I looked directly at Douglas. He refused to look at me. Every holiday, I continued, speaking to the room, every birthday, every gathering, I was the one sent to the kids' table. I was the one handed the diapers. I was the one who missed the toasts and the conversations. Not because I volunteered, but because I'm single. I took a breath. In my family, being a woman without a husband or children means your time is not your own. It means you are considered available by default. I was the backup plan. I was the free nanny. And the moment I tried to say that my life, my plans, and my time had value, I was hit in the face. Did the physical pain hurt the most? Alicia asked. No, I said. The bruise healed in a week. I looked at Douglas again. This time, he looked up. His eyes were red. The part that hurt, I said, my voice cracking slightly, was hearing my father, the man who held me when my mother died, watch his wife assault me and call it stress. It was realizing that he would rather let me bleed than inconvenience her. It was realizing that to him, keeping the peace was more important than keeping me safe. I paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the ventilation system. I did not ruin Christmas, I said firmly. I just refused to be the sacrifice that kept their version of Christmas running. Thank you, Harper, Alicia said softly. As I walked back to my seat, I passed the defense table. Rebecca was staring straight ahead, her face frozen in a rictus of shock. She knew. She had lost the room. She had lost the narrative. I sat down next to Alicia. She squeezed my hand under the table. You did good, she whispered. I looked back at the gallery. A woman in the second row, one of the neighbors who had liked Rebecca's post, caught my eye. She gave a small, hesitant nod. It was an apology. I looked at the judge. Judge Sterling was writing notes, her pen moving aggressively across the paper. She looked up and glared at Douglas Calloway with an expression that could have frozen hell over. We hadn't just won a legal argument, we had popped a blister. The infection that had been festering in the dark was finally out in the open, and no amount of holiday stress could cover the smell. Alicia Monroe stood up for her closing argument. She did not pace. She did not shout. She simply placed her hands on the podium and looked directly at Judge Sterling, her expression one of quiet, devastating resolve. The courtroom, which had been buzzing with whispers only moments before, fell into a heavy, expectant silence. Your Honor, Alicia began, her voice clear and precise, the defense would like you to believe that this case is about a family squabble. They want you to believe that the plaintiff, my client, is merely a sensitive daughter overreacting to the pressures of the holiday season. They have used the phrase holiday stress 17 times during these proceedings. They have used it as a shield. They have used it as an excuse. They have used it as a license. Alicia paused, letting the word hang in the air. But what we have seen today is not stress, she continued. Stress is burning a turkey. Stress is forgetting to buy a gift. What we saw in that video was violence. What we saw in those Instagram posts was a calculated campaign of psychological destruction. Douglas and Rebecca Calloway did not just hit Harper Calloway with a decorative object, they hit her with her own history. They weaponized her grief over her dead mother. They violated her privacy by broadcasting her teenage diary to the world. And they did it all to protect a facade, a lie of a perfect family that never existed. Alicia turned to look at the defense table. Douglas was staring at his hands. Rebecca was picking at a loose thread on her cardigan, her face pale. "This court has a duty," Alicia said, turning back to the judge, "not just to punish the assault, but to send a message that family is not a magic word that grants immunity from the law. Harper Calloway is not a prop. She is not a servant, and she is certainly not a punching bag for two people who value their reputation more than their daughter's safety." Alicia sat down. Judge Sterling took a long moment. She adjusted her glasses. She looked at the stack of evidence on her bench, the thumb drive containing the video, the printouts of the diary pages, the forensic accounting of the charity fund. Then, she looked up. Her eyes were cold, hard, and absolutely terrifying. "I have heard enough," Judge Sterling said. "I do not need to take this under advisement. The evidence is overwhelming, and frankly, it is disgusting." She turned her gaze to the defendants. "Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, please stand." Douglas and Rebecca stood up. Douglas looked like he was facing a firing squad. Rebecca was trembling, clutching her husband's arm. "In the matter of the assault," Judge Sterling said, her voice clipping the ends of her words, "based on the video evidence provided, which clearly shows Mrs. Calloway striking the plaintiff with significant force, and Mr. Calloway witnessing the act without intervention, I am finding in favor of the plaintiff. This was not a gesture, it was battery." Rebecca let out a small, strangled sob. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the defense's argument that the plaintiff is unstable is not only unsupported by any current medical evidence, but it is also contradicted by her clear, rational actions in documenting the abandonment of her niece and nephew. The only instability I see here is in the behavior of two adults who abandoned children to catch a flight and then launched a cyberbullying campaign against the person who stepped in to save them." "Your Honor," George Reynolds tried to interject. "Sit down, counselor," Judge Sterling snapped. "I am not finished." She picked up a piece of paper. Regarding the defamation and invasion of privacy claims, the posting of private medical records of a minor, even if that minor is your child, for the express purpose of humiliation is reprehensible. The posting of a private diary is malicious. You sought to destroy the plaintiff's reputation. You failed, but you succeeded in destroying your own credibility. The judge leaned forward. "I am issuing a permanent restraining order. You are to stay 500 yards away from Harper Calloway at all times. You are to have no contact with her, direct or indirect. This includes text messages, emails, social media tags, and messages sent through third parties." "But she is our daughter," Rebecca cried out. "How can we fix this if we cannot talk to her?" "You had 30 years to talk to her," Judge Sterling said. "You chose to hit her instead. That privilege is revoked." The judge continued, "I am also issuing a strictly enforced gag order. You are prohibited from mentioning Harper Calloway's name, her likeness, or referring to her by inference on any public platform. You will not post about her. You will not blog about her. You will not discuss her in your church newsletters. If I find out you have whispered her name on Facebook, I will hold you in contempt of court, and you will go to jail." Douglas flinched. The threat of jail was the only thing that seemed to penetrate his denial. "Now, regarding damages," Judge Sterling said, "for the assault, the defamation, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress, I am ordering the defendants to pay the plaintiff the sum of $250,000. A gasp went through the courtroom. That was a significant amount of money. It wasn't enough to bankrupt them, but it was enough to hurt. It was the price of the Aspen trip multiplied by 50, and the judge said, picking up the forensic accounting file. Regarding the Callaway Memorial Foundation, it has come to the court's attention that there are significant irregularities in the management of these funds. While the criminal implications are a matter for the IRS, and I will be forwarding this file to them, I have the authority to act on the civil management of the trust. She looked directly at Rebecca. Mrs. Callaway, you are hereby removed as the administrator of the foundation, effective immediately. Mr. Callaway, you are removed from the board. Control of the foundation and all its assets will be transferred to an independent trustee appointed by the court. You will no longer use a charity meant for art students to fund your lifestyle. Rebecca looked like she had been slapped. The money was painful, but the loss of the foundation, her status symbol, her source of consulting fees, her crown jewel in the community, was a death blow to her ego. Finally, Judge Sterling said, taking off her glasses, there is one more thing. You spent weeks using social media to spread lies about your daughter. You used the internet to paint her as a liar. Therefore, the remedy must match the offense. She looked at the defendants with a gaze that withered them where they stood. I am ordering you to post a public retraction and apology. It will be written by the plaintiff's attorney. It will state, clearly and without equivocation, that you lied about the events of December 24th. It will admit that you posted private medical records and diary entries in an attempt to harass the plaintiff. It will remain pinned to the top of your social media profiles for 6 months. You will not turn off the comments. No, Rebecca whispered. No, please. That will destroy us. Everyone will see it. You should have thought of that before you posted the diary, Judge Sterling said. You wanted a public audience, Mrs. Callaway. You have one. Court is adjourned. The gavel banged. It was a sharp, final sound, louder than the crack of the bow had ever been. Rebecca collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands, sobbing loudly. My reputation, she wailed. Everything we built. It is gone. It is all gone. Douglas sat frozen. He was staring straight ahead at the empty judge's bench. He didn't look at Rebecca. He didn't look at his lawyer, and he certainly didn't look at me. He was catatonic, trapped in the realization that his carefully constructed world of denial had just been dismantled by a woman in a black robe. He looked old. He looked defeated. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to run to him and fix it. Alicia turned to me and smiled. It wasn't her shark smile. It was a genuine, warm smile. It is over, Harper, she said. We gathered our papers. I walked out of the courtroom, my head high. As I pushed through the heavy double doors into the hallway, the flashbulbs went off. The local press had been waiting. They swarmed around the exit, microphones thrust forward like spears. Harper! Harper! Over here! Harper, how do you feel about the verdict? Harper, is it true you are reporting your father to the IRS? I kept walking, Alicia flanking me like a bodyguard. But one reporter, a young man from a blog that had been particularly critical of me early on, stepped into my path. Ms. Callaway, he shouted, are you happy? You just destroyed your family's reputation. You sued your own father. Are you happy that you tore your family apart? I stopped. The crowd went silent, waiting for the soundbite. I looked at the reporter. I thought about the bow. I thought about the empty driveway. I thought about the diary pages on Instagram. I thought about the years of silence, the years of smiling while I was erased. I did not destroy my family, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for every microphone to catch. I just stopped allowing them to destroy me. I turned and walked away, the cameras clicking furiously behind me. I made it to the parking lot before my legs started to shake. I leaned against my car, taking deep gulps of the cold, damp air. It smelled of rain and exhaust fumes, but to me, it smelled like freedom. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Logan. I was in the back row. The message read, I saw everything. I wanted to come say hi, but I did not want to make a scene with the cameras. Dad looks like a ghost. Rebecca is hysterical. 3 dots danced on the screen. I am proud of you. Harper. The next message said, I was too scared to say it in there, but you were right. About everything. I do not want Emma and Caleb growing up thinking that love means letting people hurt you. When you are ready, and only when you are ready, I would like to bring them to see you. Maybe we can get pizza. No holiday agenda. Just pizza. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, chasing away the lingering chill of the courtroom. It wasn't a total fix. It wasn't a perfect happy ending. My father was gone. My stepmother was an enemy for life. But my brother, my real brother, was still there. And he was finally seeing me. Pizza sounds perfect, I typed back. Tell the kids I love them. I got into my car. I didn't start the engine immediately. I just sat there, looking out the windshield. Across the street, the shops were already taking down their Christmas decorations. A man on a ladder was unspooling a string of lights. The plastic Santa Claus in the window of the bakery was being packed into a box. The season was over. For the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel the crushing weight of post-holiday guilt. I didn't feel the need to apologize for existing. I had lost my parents. Yes, I had lost the inheritance of a perfect family. But as I looked at my face in the rearview mirror, the face that had healed, the eyes that were no longer looking for approval, I realized what I had gained. I had gained myself. I started the car. The radio came on, playing a generic pop song, not a Christmas carol. I put the car in gear and pulled out of the courthouse lot. I drove past the spot where my father's SUV was parked, past the weeping figure of Rebecca being ushered into a sedan by her lawyer. I drove toward the highway, toward Portland, toward my loft with the exposed brick and the quiet view of the river. Christmas was 11 months away, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't afraid of the calendar. I wasn't afraid of the phone ringing. I was Harper Calloway. I was the woman who said no, and that was the best gift I had ever given myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and boundaries, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts on how Harper handled her family. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear that it is okay to stand up for yourself.